a lot of people who are in addiction, quite a few of them have been trafficked as well. That's the case in my own story. And so since the very beginning, we knew that we would be serving those who have been trafficked, and it has been a top priority to be trained in the trauma-informed care of those who have been trafficked, as well as helping them find freedom from addiction.
Hey, I am Wes,
And I'm Dana.
and today we're having a conversation about National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, which is today, January 11th. This whole month is actually nationally recognized as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. But this day specifically is really special as it draws attention specifically to the illegal practice of human trafficking. And Dana and I had lots of conversations, and knowing obviously about the foundation and formation of Zoe, and that this is actually a foundational part of it, not just addiction. But we also kind of realized that maybe people are following Zoe or part of Zoe, donating to Zoe, and don't know that, or maybe even understand why that's a connection. So we thought we would have a conversation
Yeah.
and bring some awareness to why it matters and why Zoe cares. So Dana, if you could kind of just kick it off, tell us about the mission of Zoe, how it serves people affected by addiction, but where human trafficking comes into that mix as well.
All along Zoe Freedom Center's front door is addiction. So that's first and foremost our mission is to help people find freedom from addiction. But what we know to be true is that a lot of people who are in addiction, quite a few of them have been trafficked as well. And that's the case in my own story. And so since the very beginning, we knew that we would be serving those who have been trafficked, and it has been a top priority to be trained in the trauma-informed care of those who have been trafficked, as well as helping them find freedom from addiction.
A lot of people might not really understand how or why, or that even it is common for those two things to find an intersect there. Will you talk to me about why that commonly happens and how Zoe is positioned to meet people at that intersection?
So when we talk about individuals who are being trafficked, oftentimes traffickers use drugs to keep them under control. And so someone becoming addicted and someone that's kind of controlling their entire life, they use the drugs as a means to keep that person under their control. So, and oftentimes we know that people who are in addiction find themselves in a hopeless situation, and the trafficker would lord that in many cases over the person to keep them tied in, to keep them bound to their trafficking, to their control, and under the control of the drugs.
When I first think human trafficking, I think global issue. I think, the Super Bowl being one of the highest traffic days, and like I think people being exported, imported as commodities. But that's not exactly the limitations of what we're talking about with trafficking, are we?
No, it's not. So I can speak on my own personal experience, and that is, so I had become addicted to drugs when I lived in New York City. And then I actually found someone in a rehab program that we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and we both left that program, and we wound up using again. And then in order to continue that relationship, because a lot of my own trauma was just wanting to be loved and wanting to be cared about and wanting someone to be there for me. And he played the role in all of those things, but he also sent me out to uh, provide sexual services for men in order to pay for both of our drug habits. And part of his control over me was, you're going to be alone. I love you was often what he said. But what I know now, and what took me honestly 17 years after becoming free from addiction to realize, was that he was using love to exploit me. And And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to be trained in the trauma-informed care of those who have been trafficked, is because oftentimes we don't even realize it until years and years go by. So this individual was somebody that I considered a boyfriend. Um, and so it can drill down to be just that simple. It's somebody that you think loves you. It could be familial, a parent that traffics their child in order to pay for their own drug addiction. So there's lots of ways to see this. And actually familial trafficking, sex trafficking is one of the top ways that people enter the trafficking world.
One of the things you just mentioned, which is really difficult for me to stomach and think about, is there's a close tie often with familial relationships and trafficking.
Yes.
Um, for you, that wasn't the case,
No.
but for many, it is. I know personally from reading Desperate for a Fix, your book, what your story is, and intimately becoming aware of the details. Which, if someone's watching this and they haven't read Desperate for a Fix, I did not consider myself a reader before this year, and I read that thing in less than 24 hours because uh, it's very revealing.
Yeah.
Dana writes it in a very engaging way, and it truly, really helped me understand what each individual facing this kind of addictions against, and where all the other difficulties really
Yeah.
intersect. It's something that really tugged on my heartstrings and made me fall even deeper in love with the organization of Zoe. But in that, I also learned about what the trafficking elements were. And so for you and for others who are facing, or who have faced addiction, like you said, you had a relationship where you thought it was love and you thought it was all these different things. And you found out obviously far later, once God intervened with helping you have some clarity and discernment, et cetera, to be able to help other women and other men who are going through the same thing, that wasn't love. It was actually, basically indentured servitude in a way.
Yes.
Um, or slavery and
Yeah.
in some cases for people. But for you and for others, uh, oftentimes even participating in sexual acts for money or whatever also pays directly towards being able to afford the addiction, right?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
It's an
So
expensive habit. I mean, it really is. And the easiest way to make that much money in a short amount of time is usually the most nefarious ways as well.
that's true. For me, it was almost an easy transition. So before this boyfriend, I actually did prostitute myself. Um, and it was an easy transition for me because of a rape when I was 14. I already devalued myself. I thought that, and then I thought that's the only thing that I really truly have to offer somebody. And that individual was a boyfriend, somebody that he was actually 21, I was 14, so he was a predator. But that was a relationship, I thought. So I was already very confused about relationships and this type of thing. And then after that, I became very promiscuous, and never did that lead to the love that I was looking for. And so from there, getting addicted to drugs, drugs numbed that pain, but then losing jobs because I was high at work or I couldn't come to work because I was sick. All of those things kind of made that leap into prostitution a little easier. Basically, the mindset was, well, if I'm not going to get what I want, which was love, out of these relationships, then I may as well get something. And money was what it was. And I also felt like there was some control that I had in that. Like, I'm going to do this and you're going to do something for me and I have control over this. And in reality, I was completely out of control. And then it was later on that the individual that trafficked me came into the picture. But it was still because I was looking for something. I was looking for love, and I hadn't gotten it up until that point. And so his promise of loving and staying with me, which I thought he was doing, was it transformed into him sending me out to make money.
Yeah, because we know at the root of addiction, there's a God-sized hole. And so
Yes.
for you and your journey, because I read your book, I completely understand that you were seeking love, you
Right.
were seeking acceptance. Dana, the girl who was rejected and made fun of, found acceptance in the crowd who did drugs
Right.
recreationally and had fun. And then there was a boy there, and then that boy ended up being a man. And
Yeah.
like all those things really coincide, but you were trying to fill the hole that only God could fill,
That's
that
right.
you wouldn't learn until that night at Rikers. And so in that process, like for us and how we see people come through the doors of Zoe, many of them have been fighting to fill that hole. And
Right.
we know it's filled with God,
Yes.
but and all the obstacles is often filled with drugs or with sex or uh, any kind of things that make you feel good and make the dopamine hit possible.
Right.
So help me and help those who are watching this understand um, how Zoe, which most people see as an addiction treatment center or addiction services organization, where we serve in this human trafficking puzzle.
So currently, with our outpatient services, we act as like a resource. So if someone comes to our front door and they have an addiction, and we become aware that they have been trafficked or in danger in some form or another with their trafficker or need to get away, then we connect them with um, this network of trafficking houses or anti-trafficking houses that are across the nation. We partner with the Samaritan Women, and through that partnership, we have access to many places. And so we have connected women with anti-trafficking homes, shelters on the other side of the country, because somehow or another they found their way to Zoe Freedom Center either by phone or walked in the door, and we've been able to connect them with those services. When we open our first women's home, it will be a shelter for women who have been trafficked. And so, as I said, it will be our addiction is our front door. So they will have need to have an addiction. And then as they're in our program, it could take months before they realize, like me, it took years, but it could take months before they realize that they've been trafficked. Some know immediately, some it may take a while. But when we do cross that bridge, if we do come to that intersection where the addiction and the trafficking actually, they become aware of that, then we'll be prepared to take care of them in a trauma-informed way. So for Zoe, of course, what we've said is addiction is the front door, and everybody knows that follows us. They understand that part. But we haven't had the narrative that much, even though it's been since day one in our mission and in the vision is to care for these women who have been trafficked. That will come in our next phase of service where we are actually the shelter for those women. And then if there's women or men, I mean, we won't have a men's shelter yet, but that happens with men as well. But if someone does come to our door and they don't have an addiction and they have been trafficked, then we don't just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you." We are a resource hub. And so we will sit with them and figure out what the best opportunities for them, for that person is, and get them connected to those resources.
I think that's great. And if I'm correct, you guys have already gone through a fair amount of training, official training, with what was it, Samaritan's Women Institute for Shelter Care? Is that correct? Am I saying that
Mhm.
right?
Yes, the Samaritan Women's Institute for Shelter Care. And so far we've done a lot of the foundational work for an organization. So basically, the Samaritan Women's Institute for Shelter Care is a anti-trafficking organization. We are the only organization that they've accepted as a mentee that is has a front door of addiction and is not actively in the human trafficking world or anti-human trafficking world yet, with the goal to be there. But they have accepted us as mentees, and they have helped us get our foundational work laid out so that when we come upon problems in opening a nonprofit, they've really been instrumental in making sure our policies and our procedures and our ability to operate as a Christ-centered organization legally has all been laid out for us, and we have walked on this journey with them so that we're solid. So we're solid. So the next phase of our training with the Samaritan women is programs and services. And so that is where we will get all of the training and all of the bolstering that we need to make sure that we are not just adequately, but exceptionally caring for the people who come into our service.
That's incredible. So I know your story. You've even just told us a little bit about your story of how Dana's journey of addiction intersected with human trafficking. Since beginning Zoe in 2020, or even in your journey up to that, I mean, it's been 21 years now of freedom from
Yeah,
addiction.
it's wild.
Do you have any stories or a story that stands out in your mind that you could share with the people watching today of what God has done in rescuing someone from human trafficking? Maybe like like a success story per se.
Yes. So one day the phone rang and I answered actually my cell phone. And I don't recall how they got my cell phone number, but it was a mother of a daughter who was in Arkansas. Yeah, Arkansas. And she knew that her daughter had been out there and was addicted and was being trafficked and had made her way to a detox at the hospital in Arkansas. And she asked me, what can I do? I'm all the way over here. She lived in Virginia. The mother lived in Virginia. She said, what can I do? I need help. I don't know how to help my daughter, but she's asking for help. And what can I do? So I immediately contacted, I was actually driving home from North Carolina. I was driving back to Virginia. So I'm on the phone driving home. And I contacted Jean at the Samaritan Women, and I asked her if she could look up some of the mentees that may be out in Arkansas. And so she did, and she gave me the numbers, and I started calling the numbers. And within the next 3 hours, there was a peer, somebody to support this young lady at the hospital that wound up going to the hospital to sit with her at the hospital and get her into a shelter the very next day. And so it was just kind of wild to see how that all played out. That was actually our first opportunity to help someone who was being trafficked to get into a safe place where she could get free from her trafficker, find freedom from drugs. So she did go through the detox, but the bed was waiting for her since the very day after. So she felt safe in going through this detox and staying away from her trafficker, and then getting into this home where after she's in the home, we don't get any more information um, because of HIPAA laws and things like that, which is fine. But we do know that she went, and so that was amazing to be able to do from way over here on the East Coast and help someone get into a safe place.
It's incredible to have a network of friends who can make a difference
Yes, yeah. So
in
it's not just
ways.
us. I mean, that's probably something that we haven't really had a lot of sharing, is that it's not just us in this little office space here in Fredericksburg. We actually have a network of people in trafficking, in the trafficking, anti-trafficking world, as well as in the addiction world. So no matter what the person that's sitting in front of us needs, we have a network of people that can fill the needs that we can't fill right now. Nobody walks in our door and says, I need help. And we say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. That never happens. It's okay, let's figure out what you need. And now let's connect those dots for you and get them where they need to be.
I love that. So I found a document recently that you and Mark printed at the beginning of Zoe, which, crazy enough, in 2 months is going to be 4 years.
I can't even believe it.
I mean, you look way better than when you founded it. Like, everything's going great. So,
I feel good. I feel the joy of the Lord.
but it's been 4 years. And in those 4 years, I found this old folder insert, which was awesome. I'm going to open it and share it in this real quick because people will be able to see it. So
Right.
this was an insert that Zoe put out day one, or close to day one. It might even have been pre-day one, to be honest, for people to understand what the plan was, what the vision was, what the mission was, etc. And so this was discussing from the get-go. In 2021, we will attend the Samaritan Women's Institute for Shelter Care's mentorship program. Through our participation in this program, we will be fully equipped to provide high quality, compassionate, trauma informed care while also ensuring that our organization is sustainable and aligned with best practices. And that's because phase two, even then, in day one, phase two was always going to be this residential
Yes.
aspect where people could be there, not just have uh, addiction based care, but also trauma informed care. I figured it'd be really cool to bring back day one
Yeah.
vision to kind of put in front of people. So we've talked about a lot. We've shared some good stories. And we talked about how partnership is incredible. It's incredible that you have partners like Samaritans, and that you have other partners in like your networks. But some of this vision is only possible by you gaining new partners, correct?
Yes.
Specifically, I'm going to make an assumption, probably people who believe in this too and want to support Zoe
Yeah.
and what you're trying to do with making things like this residential program possible, right?
Right. Yeah.
So tell me about what partnerships or where people can, in the process of the whole human trafficking side of it, where they can raise awareness, how they can help maybe with funds or partnerships. Just tell me about how people can help.
So for us directly, prayer is the number one need. We need prayer not just for our organization, but for those that we are seeking to help. That God would start to move in their hearts, and so that when they come in our door, that God's already been tilling the soil, and that they have a soft, receptive heart, so that when we talk to them about Christ, that if they have never made him an option in their freedom or in their journey, that they would make God an option. Another way is through time. Um, we can't do what we do. We're a very small staff here, but we have an army of volunteers, and they are phenomenal. We always need volunteers. We need people to get out in the community and love on people and make them aware that we're here. Um, and then, of course, financial. We can't do anything that we do without finances, sadly. It would be nice if we didn't need to, but we do. It's just a part of the nonprofit world. We don't charge anybody for services here, regardless of their ability to pay. If that person has an ability to pay and they want to, they can make a donation, but we don't charge anybody for our services. We just right out of the gate felt God had put it on our heart to just remove that barrier, just to remove that barrier completely, so that the individuals won't have to worry about that. I spoke with someone yesterday that said, I'm trying to get my kid into rehab and we don't have the money and they don't have the insurance.
My friend said yes to counseling through Zoe because
Yeah,
it was free. They
right.
had said no many, many years of addiction counseling or certified substance abuse counseling. They'd said no for years because they couldn't afford it. And once
Right.
they were connected with Zoe, heard it was free, they started going every week with Art, and they're free from addiction.
Exactly. Yeah, I know who you're talking about, and I think that that's key because it's expensive. It's expensive, but we're talking about people's lives. And so those of us that can afford to give to help somebody like that individual to find freedom from addiction, we just really honestly hope that you'll do that. Um, because we do have people coming in our doors and leaving our doors free from addiction. We have a lot of stories that we've been telling over the last 4 years of people whose lives have changed. And because their lives have changed, it's been a ripple effect into their families' lives. They're leading their kids to Christ. They're able to talk to people that in the same position that they were in, that to help them understand that they can get free. I mean, it's exactly my story. God made me free, and now I'm helping other people get free. And if you can imagine that that's how the ripple effect happens, that one individual that went to counseling because it was free, if he touches 10 other lives, I mean, we think about it as lives, right? But let's look at it as our workforce. Let's look at it as our family, as our neighbor, as our teachers. I mean, really legitimately, the issue that we're having right now with addiction, it's infiltrated uh, every aspect of living. And so we need to think of it in lives and loved ones and souls uh, but in a practical way, it's our workforce. It's the number one killer of men 18 to 45. That's also our fighting force. I mean, it's really when we look at it that way and we kind of break it down, these are not just blank faces. These are people that we see every day. Yeah.
Today is about human trafficking, National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And as we end this conversation, what is a message that you would like to share with people on the importance of raising awareness today? Maybe sharing this video, saying something to someone. What message would you like to share?
I think really the message I'd like to share is to be kind to people. A lot of times we can see someone that's in a struggling part of their life, and we can visually see that. It's a physical thing that we can see, and we just need to remember that that is a snapshot in this person's life, that there was a lot that happened before to get them to this place of desperation where they may be addicted or homeless or whatever, experiences that they're having. And we have at that point an opportunity. We have an opportunity to either help make the remainder of their years better, or we have an opportunity to walk away and just judge that person or say, well, I can't help them. um and I think the key in this is to show the love by being kind. Sometimes we get this fear, and fear we know doesn't come from the Lord, it comes from the enemy. And we get this fear of people who are just people. They're just people, and they're just having a difficult time. Be kind, even if it's just look them in the face and say, I hope that you're having a good day, or have a good day, or I care, anything. Just be kind and give that person some self-respect and decency in realizing that they're not invisible. I see you and I care.
I know this because I read this book, Desperate for a Fix, which, if you're watching this, I've shown this twice, and you should get it. Not because it's Dana, but because it's Dana and you know her and you can connect with this story. There was a bellhop, a doorman, that showed you kindness when your head was gashed open.
Yeah.
That beautiful scar right there. When your head was gashed open and gushing blood because of a human trafficking related event,
Mhm.
there was a doorman who showed you kindness, who kept you safe,
Yeah.
who treated you like a human.
Yeah. I mean, literally just helped me clean up my face. While everybody else on the streets of New York City was walking past me and looking because I was gushing blood down my face. He was the only person that stopped to help.
Partnering that in your story, there was a police officer.
Yeah.
There was two police officers, actually, when the rest of New York City didn't care to find you, went
Yeah.
out of their way to care for you, provide you
Yeah.
with new shoes, which ended up getting you in trouble because you stood out in a crowd. But along
I did
your
that all.
story
Yeah.
of having chances to meet Jesus and find freedom,
Right.
it was simple acts of kindness that allowed you to not take the next step of being even more reckless than you already were, to be honest,
Right.
to eventually find freedom.
Yeah.
So I would encourage listeners to listen to what Dana is saying and find kindness,
Yeah.
because
Be kind.
sometimes that's all it takes for someone to give their day another chance and get one step closer to finding freedom
Yeah.
from human trafficking or from addiction.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
well, we've talked for a while, and hopefully, if someone's made it this far in our conversation, they've learned a little bit about Zoe,
Yeah.
maybe learned a little bit about your story, and our hope is that you'd be encouraged by this, to raise awareness,
Yeah.
and understand that there's a difference that can be made in our community and that you can be part of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, again, my name's Wes, and this is
I'm Dana.
thanks for watching, and share this. Please
Yes.
share this.
Please
Raise
do.
awareness on this National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, and let's help people find freedom.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.